Who here has had an out-of-body experience? Let's work our way around. Do you share? Do you mind telling or sharing?
No, not at all. And this is the best way I could explain it. One of my earliest memories was floating in a nursery, and I saw a nurse sitting at a desk with her night desk light on, writing down. It was the very first memory I ever had. That was it. And after that, it was just in a dream state when I went to sleep. I never actually. Well, I've tried several times, but I never got out. But only in a dream state when I went to sleep a few times. Okay. The very first memory I ever had was that. And I don't remember any emotion with it or anything, just what I saw. So it was very brief. And that's about it.
Anyone else?
Well, my out-of-body experience occurred when I was in college, and I was, it wasn't under ideal circumstances. I was extremely intoxicated. So I have to admit that, and probably under the influence of something else. But so I'm not condoning that. Just putting it out there.
It's an important point.
But I think it's necessary to say that. And I had gotten really sleepy, so I decided to lay down on the couch. Someone the person whose room that was didn't take kindly the fact that there was a man passed out on the couch. And I remember hearing someone say, "Get him off the couch." Someone came and tugged on my arm. And when that happened, I ejected out of my head and went through the ceiling of the house I was in and was able to see all this from up in the air. And I became aware that there was something above me, and I looked up, and there were these bluish translucent beings that were floating around up above me. And I sort of just suddenly had this awareness that life was very precious. Everything that I was experiencing it mattered a lot, and we all mattered a lot as people. And it was just sort of a sense of unity with the world, with nature, and other people. And I saw myself from above, and I came back down in my body, and then I just had all this sense of joy that there was a meaning to life. That's it in a nutshell.
And it's very important that you mentioned the conditions, because many people, particularly in shamanic practices, use a lot of substances to get themselves out. And again, it's part of the process. Now, they use it under fairly controlled conditions. They know what they're doing. They've done it for a while. And it's not always fun, but at least they know the roadmap. Okay? So they know what's going to happen to the person, what they're going to experience, depending on what they've ingested, and how things are going to go, and they can help them through it. When many people today overindulge, they don't know what's going to happen. Hence the famous hallucinations of the pink elephant stories. We toxify our bodies, and then we fire things off. But at the same time, we can write some of that off as just the brain firing off. Just as in a dream, you may find yourself cold, and then you wake up and you find that the window's open. Well, sure, there's a certain amount of that goes on. But we move beyond that into the realm of many recorded out-of-body experiences, such as they happen every year. Someone on one of the television networks does a show on the guy who's on the operating table. Well, how did he see what was up and behind the light when he was down on the table? How did they know where all these different things were? So we move into a different realm of perception, a realm of knowing, a realm of sensing. So this is what we mean when we talk about out-of-body experiences. Now, yes?
I'm sorry. I was going to say, a mixture of drugs and alcohol, and that and that almost sounds like you were going and made a choice, because you said you had a sense of joy to come back. It really sounds like
yeah. I couldn't go any higher than I was.
Yeah.
And I was, and I wanted to. I wanted to though, but the choice is made for me.
Oh wow.
Well, and that sounds pretty typical.
It's like a second chance. Here's the joy.
Right.
Okay.
Well, we'd even say it's almost like not so much as extreme as that, but you had the experience unencumbered. You see, when you're in this state, your general sense of self, your notions of self, aren't present. So your encumbrances aren't there. You experience things more directly. Okay. So the good news is you're here with us. They didn't yank you off. I remember a slightly different partial out-of-body experience when I was half asleep and I was cold, and I'm reaching over and I'm pulling at the blanket. I'm just pulling it. I can't grab the blanket. It's not coming. And finally, I look up and my arm's down here, but I'm. Said,
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Well, it was pretty annoying because some of the different experiences, I don't want to say they become mundane, but so that was annoying. But that was fun. So what we have is this experience where we leave the body. And we call it out-of-body experience. We also have another one known as astral projection. That's a more common term used a lot in New Age circles. And it comes from the Greek word astron, or star, and refers to the notion of the 7 ancient planets representing the various levels of heaven and the cosmic order of creation. Because according to the ancients, particularly the writings attributed to Thoth Hermes, we descend through the heavens to earth. We go from the great land of bliss and openness through the veils into ignorance and suffering, similar to the notion of the fall of Eden. And then our job is to return. We have to fight our way back up through the levels. See, getting back is not a freebie. Getting back has payment. And if you look at the Jewish mystical texts, each of the levels has a guardian. And the guardian has a name. And the name is essentially the key or the password to it. It's not a name like we think of a name. It's a sound, it's a quality, it's a notion. That's why you see in the ancient writings, knowledge of the names of the gods was a closely guarded secret. Just as like you see in different schools, the knowledge of mantras is carefully guarded. Even though they'll tell you some things, they won't tell you everything. And the mantras generally have 4 levels of meaning. You're often given just one, and you're left at that. But I know that the Tibetan mantras have at least 4 levels of meaning. And very rarely are they written down.
Would that be like the Kabbalic cube of space, the vibration of it, to moving to a next level on the tree? Would that have it?
The ascent of the tree.
Yes.
The ascent of the tree of life, going up sphere by sphere. That's a classical notion of initiation. Classical initiation takes us sphere by sphere through the tree, and it takes a tremendous amount of time. Many people may be able to go up 1 level in a lifetime, or a fraction of a level. If someone is, and there's usually 4 or 5 sub-levels to a sphere. So and that's why the path or tradition and instruction is important, because it takes a great deal of work to go up each level. And we talk in terms of levels, but what that means is an expansion or unfoldment of consciousness. Think of it going this way rather than, step by step by step. Think of it as an expansion. Okay? And there are ways, that's why you see different people try to do shortcuts. And there are shortcuts that work and shortcuts that don't. So what I'm giving you is one of the shortcuts that does. Clearly, when we enter into this state, we do not use our physical body, but we use our astral body, our starry body, as Paracelsus calls it. This is our heavenly body, sometimes known as an astrosome. Soma, again, body, astrosome. This is what we experience as consciousness through and out of the body and after death. It is not our soul, but it is a medium whereby we experience non-corporal life. This doctrine was highly developed by the Egyptians, the Indians, Tibetans, Chinese, and others. Now, in the Gospel, we read, "In my Father's house there are many mansions, and I go to prepare one for you." And this is what it's referring to, the different levels of awakening that we occur. I'm going to prepare a place for you. I'm going to help you with this awakening. This is a place, this is a state of being, a state of mind. But we use the symbolism of a physical location because that's how we deal with things in our world in duality. And even when we're in these other realms of duality, just more subtle than this one, we still imagine them to be very concrete. That's why the spiritualists love Summerland, the place of the eternal sun. Everyone is young and beautiful forever. Perfect heaven. And we see that notion again even in other teachings. And somewhere in the New Testament it refers to the dead always looking as if in the prime of their life. There are other meanings to that as well. It has to do with the energy body on a different level. But again, we project this notion on the heavens as being a perfect place. Here, just better. Here, without any of the burdens. And in a way, on some level, part of it is. Because if we look at the traditional teachings of how everything came into being, as we go from the very, very subtle and abstract to the very dense, we go through gradations. So at some point on this spectrum of consciousness, on this spectrum of reality, there is a mental construct that's just like here, only better. And for many people, that's heaven, or their idea of it. But as they go beyond it, things get more abstract. It's no different than those of you who took, math in high school. Addition and subtraction was fine, and then multiplication and division was good, and then algebra might have been a little tougher, or maybe you really ate it up. And then maybe some geometry, but by the time trigonometry came around, it was just, whoa, it's too out there. That's what we're talking about. That same kind of experience on a completely mental level. But because it's mental, it should not be in any way thought of as intellectual. It also involves all of our feelings and emotions, the summation of who we are. Again, going to the vision of Ezekiel, we see him standing there and seeing the spinning wheels. We see the various churches in the revelation of St. John, and the notion of dreaming again and being visited. Now, when we talk about projection, it's because there's a sense of leaving the body, and it's often associated with spinning. A feeling of spinning, usually in the area of the navel, or maybe a little higher in the solar plexus, but not much higher than that. Some people do get it higher, sometimes in the head, or when they start to get dizzy, or sick or something, they may have an experience. Many people have out-of-body experiences when they are ill. That's where you get a lot of the notion of the wounded healer, or the coming back from beyond kind of stuff. Hildegard von Bingen was famous for dying and then waking up on her funeral bed. Must have been annoying after a while. And she'd have all these visions that she'd ask them to write down. Wasn't that fun? Said, well, she doesn't stink yet. She'll be awake soon. Not rigid yet. Give it a couple days. But, in their mind, since there's almost no respiration or no pulse, they give them up. Other times there's barely respiration or pulse. So this idea of having gone and come back, you see it across cultures. The reason this spinning takes place is because there's action or motion within our psychic centers. So when you read Ezekiel and you hear about the spinning wheels, these are actions within the psychic centers. It's an aerial motion because air has a direct relationship to our psychic body, our spiritual body. That's why we refer to it as an ethereal body, or the airy body, or that's why they give it images of wings. Because breath is life. If you don't breathe, you die. Breath is consciousness. Getting taken up in the whirlwind. That's exactly what it feels like very often. Exactly. And that's what's interesting is I was talking to one of my students, not one of my speech students, one who was interested in these things. And I said, it's very interesting because the symbolic analogies that we read about in scriptures and different occult texts, we think of them as just that symbolic. But reality is when you have the direct experience, you'll know that that's really what it's like. That's really what you experience. But this is the best way we could describe it to someone who's not having it. So there is this powerful sense of spinning and getting lifted up. We also, with that, you'll see the symbolism of the serpent, because the serpent slithers or moves. But the serpent is also what? It is wisdom. It's the choice. It's the knowledge of good and evil. Once you have that knowledge, you're no longer ignorant. You're no longer innocent. You've lost your virginity. You have to choose now and take responsibility for your choices. There's consequences to actions. Now we're no longer in unity, in which there's no consequence. Now we're in duality, where karma is in full force. Cause, effect. Cause, effect. If, then. If, then. So the serpent is wisdom. It's responsibility. And they tell me it really does taste just like chicken.
It does.
Now, with this, we talk about the notions of our immortal soul. And exoteric Christianity doesn't do a very good notion of describing the soul. Judaism does a better job. They talk about 4 levels of the soul, 4 types of the soul. Well, now, the way we talk about a soul is almost as if it's something like I own, and I keep it in my closet. Yeah, I got one of those. Yeah, I'll sell it to you. I'm not using it. Yeah, how much you offer it? That's fine. Yeah, good. What is it? It's consciousness. It's awareness. So when we hear about, if you take the word eternal soul and put the word eternal consciousness, that's what we're talking about. Or consciousness of the eternal. Your awareness of the eternal. You don't want to jeopardize that. And you don't want to jeopardize that by what? What jeopardizes your immortal soul? What? Oh, geez, we even whisper the word. It's sin, girl! And sin means to what? Miss the point. Now, there is a notion of sin which has a direct theological meaning of directly going against a religious precept. There's levels to it. Most people screw up. We just make mistakes. There are times when people know what they're doing is wrong and they do it anyhow. We call that evil. Okay? To know what is wrong and to do it anyhow is evil. To not know what is wrong and to stumble and bumble through life is just to be human. And then hopefully we wake up to it. This is a very important point to make because even the religions make a distinction on those points. Well, it's the word comes from an archery term, to miss the target. You miss the center. You miss. Okay? But there is another meaning to it too. So most of the time that's what happens with us. We make that error. We make that mistake. And why do we make it? Because we're selfish. Ignorance comes from selfishness. When we put our notions in front of others. When we don't take time to listen to the inner wisdom. The still small voice within. See, this is where I get heretical. And heresy means to have an opinion. Literally, that's what it means. What I'm giving you is really orthodoxy here. I'm giving you a teaching. Doxy means teaching. I'm giving you a traditional teaching. But I'm also giving you a little bit of, compared to other orthodoxies, what I'm going to give you is heresy. It's an opinion. Because you're not allowed to have those. And sometimes with a good reason, because a lot of opinions people have are just not worth listening to. They're just silly. No matter how many times I hear it, I can assure you that the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, Free and Accepted Masons, is not in league with the lizard men at the center of the earth. So you may hold that opinion as much as you like, but that doesn't make it true. Okay? Yeah, just Google it.
It'll kill you.
So we have to understand that it's important that when you have an opinion, that it's based on experience. Not just fantasy, particularly when it's of a spiritual nature. And that your opinion be based on experience that is rooted in tradition. It keeps looping back. Now, it may be some spontaneous awakening you have, and that's fine, as long as you clarify it as such. But this is why, again, we say why traditions are important. They help create a package and menu of knowledge that moves us forward generation after generation. So your eternal mind, your awareness of the eternal. See, I do not believe that we are created sinful. We may be born in sin because we're born in ignorance, and we're born into duality, which is a domain of ignorance. But inherently, we are whole. There's nothing missing. There's nothing to be added, nor is there nothing to be taken away. And in the words of Jacob Bima, heaven and hell are within you. It's what you make of life. It's what you make of things. All of this exists within you. That's why we say that the human being is a microcosm, or a universe in miniature. Now, what that means in scriptural terms is you're created in the image of God. Well, if we think of God as, well, everything is God, and we think of the universe, or cosmos, that means you are created in the image of the cosmos. So all of these energies, all of these things exist within each and every one of us in miniature. That gives rise to what's called the doctrine of correspondences, sometimes referred to as the golden chain of Homer, although that's somewhat incorrect. The doctrine of correspondences is elaborated upon by the great German or Swiss German alchemist Paracelsus, or Theophrastus Bombast von Hohenheim. It is also elaborated on by Cornelius Agrippa, who wrote the 3 books of occult philosophy, and probably the 4th book as well, but we're not sure. And this elaborates the ancient Egyptian and Greek ideas about the interrelationship of nature and the interrelationship of mind and nature and of man or humanity and the cosmos. Now we move we move away from traditional religious teachings into the much more esoteric ones. I'm not going to go in detail about this chain of association, but it will be suffice to say it is an integral part of understanding any of the Hermetic doctrines or any of the Kabbalistic notions of our relationship to the cosmos. Another way, which is not so detailed, but is easily more dealt with, would be the writings of St. John and St. Teresa, the Spanish mystics. They would be a more a way to do it for those of you who are more Catholic inclined and quite useful.
Mark, could you, what I'm kind of stumbling on is, if sin is missing the target, and the soul is the consciousness of the eternal, how does missing the target affect the consciousness of the eternal?
It affects your consciousness, your awareness of the eternal. You exist. But you're here. You're aware of a variety of things right now. Mostly the sounds in the room, sitting in the chair. You're not even aware sitting in the chair probably until I pointed out to you. There's a little itch on the back of your head that you're probably not even aware until someone points it out to you. So all this stuff is going on. All this stuff going on inside you. The blood's pumping, the air's moving, digesting breakfast. But we're not aware of it. That exists below the threshold of consciousness. When we move below the threshold of our normal consciousness, we do that in meditation, we enter into the realm of the unconscious. What we are unconscious of. The universe isn't unconscious of it. We're unconscious of it. And as we work more and more with all that stuff that's going on that we're unaware of, we call that an expansion of consciousness. It's already there. We're just becoming more aware of it. Whether it's physical things, whether it's mental things, whether it's psychological, or whether it's spiritual. Whether we kind of push through our psychological blocks and fantasies and dreams and control our mind enough to be open to, such as the mystical visions that different folks have had. We move through that. And even as we move through that, that continues to grow and grow and grow. Well, that is only possible by having greater integration, personal integration. So when we sin or err, and we're talking really big stuff here, not little stuff, okay? But even at some point the little pebbles hurt, okay? We're missing the fundamental unity of everything. We're missing the underlying unity. That's what's happening. Okay? Because when I put me before you, I'm missing the fundamental relationship. Of course, illumination is a lightning flash. It does actually appear like that at times. Please be clear on that. We also refer to this illumination as the primordial light and the ground of our being. Beamer likes to refer to it as the ground of our being. The next question we must ask is then, what is the body of light? And the body of light is our luminous body, what we call the resurrection body or the immortal body. Jesus, Mary were all said to have gone to heaven corporally. So is Ezekiel. We even, not to be outdone, even Mohammed took his horse with him off the Temple Mount, we're told, bodily into heaven. And of course, Ezekiel it becomes one or indistinguishable from the archangel Metatron, the highest archangel. Sometimes we refer to this, or if you look at some of the Oriental teachings, they refer to these luminous body as the rainbow body because it's colored in light, just as the different spheres of the tree of life have different colors that radiate outward. It's sometimes called the diamond body because it's clear and hard, it's indestructible, meaning hard meaning indestructible. And within Tibetan Buddhism, there are 3 levels of this body. In one, the body, the physical body at the time of death, and this is a process they go through, they can't be disturbed during it. This is important. Reduces to that of a small child. It shrinks down. In the second level, only the hair and nails remain. And in the third level, nothing remains. Remember Yoda? Yeah, that's it. Obi-Wan. Nothing remains. Total transformation. Agrippa talks about this in his 3 books. Now, for those of you who think that this is just something that has occurred and does not occur currently, I would direct you to looking at this book, The Rainbow Body, in which he talks about 2 of his uncles having done it under the eyes of Chinese authorities. I remember when a friend of mine, a well-known esotericist and author, told me about when he was in Italy, and that story was personally told to him. I am aware of an alchemist whose name many of you would not recognize, as he wanted it that way. Some of you might. Well, I am told at the time of his death, the body had been reduced considerably in size. This is not the normal decomposition process that you think of, that there was very little left of him, and he had not been dead that long.
Would that be from the type of life that they lived, that, like a purer life, that when it came time for them to die, that this is the process that started?
The process doesn't start. They control the process.
Oh, okay.
They control the process. That's the important point. The process unfolds, but they're able to manage that unfoldment. They're able to.
After a technical physical death, they're still their essence.
They're still there.
Okay.
Even though, and that's one of the problems. The way we deal with dead people is really not good. The way we deal with dead people, and I'll get to this at the end of today, but you certainly, one thing is you don't want to die in a hospital. Yeah, the Tibetans have a joke about it, and it's not so much a joke as to say, go find a cave somewhere and die. You're better off. And it's just because the whole process that you need is interrupted by the whole medical process, and it's interrupted by the wailing and gnashing of folks around you. So the state of the external conditions that are desirable, these guys would sew themselves in a tent. They'd lock themselves in a barn. They didn't know. They not only didn't they want to be disturbed, but they couldn't be. So at certain parts of the process, they can't be disturbed.
Is it because they're using the body? They're utilizing?
Yeah,
they're actually using
they're extracting the essence of the body.
Right.
Because remember,
that vehicle?
because the physical world is energy.
Right.
Your physical body is energy. It's consciousness.
Yeah.
They're extracting that. They're using
they
it.
have to use it.
Yeah. They're just like you do in yoga.
It's fuel.
Yeah. So you have to, there's more details to it than that, but they can't be disturbed. So we have to find ways to either recognize the onset of death and extract ourselves from our situation, or we prepare for given the situations that we have. And we'll talk about that at the end of today. There's something else which we refer to as the second death. That is a phrase that is used 4 times. It's used exclusively in the Book of Revelations. And this refers to the dissolution or death of the astral body. The body of light is what we are referring to when we read that some will not taste the second death. The Gospel, or the Book of Revelations, the vision of John, is an initiatory text. It's a symbolic initiatory text of the complete path of inner transformation. It needs to be read in that light. I've written somewhat about this on other levels, but that's the level for you, that is the level you are concerned with, not the others. These pictures come from a book called The Secret Symbols of the Rosicrucians of the 16th and 17th century. These were colored by myself by using two 19th century editions and one older German edition. And this is one of the ways they illustrate it. God, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the divine name. We call it Yahweh, Jehovah. In fact, this particular permutation refers to the month we're in, the sign of Aries, the beginning. It's winged, it's luminous, and from that all of nature comes. Nature expresses itself not just through mind, but through the four elements of fire, earth, water, and air. These four elements express themselves in the vegetable and mineral worlds. This circle here, Azoth, it's a peculiar term coined by Paracelsus that refers to the beginning and the end. It's a permutation of alphabets, both Roman and Hebrew. It means everything, the whole thing. And where are we? We're here. Everything is contained in us. Now notice that the man is red. Adam means the red man, the red earth, the red. And red is a particular color for perfection. That's why one of the reasons why the angels that we see are red, or that they're in this text. A certain level of fiery perfection.
So, I'm sorry, is that like Malkuth? Is that...
Well, they're not expressing it that way, but that would be how everything comes through into our world, where we're at. We're here, right here. We're here, and all this comes into, that's Malkuth. So for us, if you want to think of man, that would be Malkuth. The other side, the other world, they're all part of Malkuth as well, but it's trying to show how everything is connected and how it flows. Maybe we can close that back door if that's... This is an expression, of course. This is the book of Revelations, the seven seals. And of course we have our angels around it, and everything is fiery. This is red and golden. And beneath it we have the peculiar symbol of a rose and a golden cross, a symbol of Rosicrucianism. And it says, Mea Victoria in Cruce Rosa, or my victory in the rosy cross. And what's interesting here is the phrase that's underneath the text. Notice the word that is repeated most often. I know nothing. I can do nothing. I do not want anything. I do not please myself. I do not praise myself. I do not relish anything. I do not learn. I do not seek. I do not desire anything in heaven and on earth. Only the living word alone, which became flesh, Jesus Christ, and in him crucified. Nothing. 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 No thing. In Kabbalah, the Ein Sof are the nothingless light, the nothingness, emptiness, void, opening up, getting everything out of the way. I don't praise myself, I don't condemn myself. Get out of your own way. The only thing I want is that. That which is what? The living word that became flesh. The living word is not an abstraction that becomes real or concrete. And we can talk about, again, Jesus Christ, historically and metaphysically and symbolically, but you see where it's going. The individual must make space or room for this to happen within themselves. Focus only on one thing. They're neither concerned about heaven or hell anymore. Heaven or earth. Doesn't matter. If you're too concerned about going to heaven or going to hell, you're in trouble. That won't get you anywhere. You'll get neither. Again, there's fiery symbols. Fire. This is an alchemical text. This is interesting because it says, the star of the kings of the Orient, the heavenly and earthly Eve, mother of all creatures in heaven and earth, the Virgin Sophia, virgin meaning ever pure. Ever pure because they call her the virgin whore. The whore because she couples with anything and everything, but that's what nature does. It's always producing things. It's ever pure because it cannot be anything else but. Life is always pure. Life is always producing. And above it we see the symbol for one of the symbols for Mercury, which is a symbol of life itself. Okay? Here, water, blood, white, red. This is important here, white and red, water and blood, because these are the things that flowed forth from the wound of Christ at the crucifixion. But within alchemy, the white and the red are the mercuries that are dealt with to create the stone, which is, they call it the red stone, the red philosopher. Within Tibetan Vajrayana, within the Tummo practices, the inner yoga practices, everything deals with what they call, not water, but semen, blood and semen, white and red essences, the essences of life, or mercury, or mercury, or what we call mercury essences of life. Again, just another way of illustrating how everything is interconnected. Neither one of these is right nor wrong. They're simply different methods of looking at the universe and giving a particular teaching relevant to whatever that class happened to be, whether they're interested in astrology, alchemy, Kabbalah, Beminist mysticism, which is where a lot of this comes from, or what have you. Trying to look for images I can explain to you quickly. Here, the zodiac. Yeah, okay. We would have the zodiac and the planets, and these would be, in the Hermetic tradition, the 8th sphere, the 8th level, in which Sophia descends into Earth, being in at each level a new level is created, something else happens, is given birth to, and finally till we reach Earth in total ignorance, with just a faint memory of where we have come from. And now the esoteric path is what we call the path of return. And the path of return then of views, the fundamental key to it is meditation. And that meditation must be based upon a practice in which you have the most complete confidence and devotion. That is why devotional practices are particularly strong and particularly efficient and effective. That's also why we see devotional practices that use, that's why we see from the Sophia picture the constant survival of the female ideal in that way, because that is the method of return. We talk about it as some refer to it very primitively as the survival of the goddess, but that's just a primitive expression. It has more to do with the notion of Sophia as experience, Sophia as losing your innocence, having an awakening or wisdom and knowledge of understanding and cause and effect that comes from that. One of the interpretations, above the cross of Christ is said to have had INRI, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. In alchemy, we translate it as nature renews all things by fire. But there's another translation that says Isis, Queen of Nature, is the initiator of all. She's the awakener of all. Now we're going to deal with the practice part of the program. And the practice part of the program is in many ways very simple, but it requires time. Almost all of these things require a great deal of time. And with anything, what we do is we establish our, let's say the motivation, that's a word that's used, but really the reason we're going to do this. What is the reason we're going to undertake this work? What is its purpose? That sets up our philosophical framework for everything. Now, as I said earlier, esoteric techniques, like their exoteric ones, utilize visualization and prayer. Most exoteric techniques, that is, religious techniques, don't use visualization that much, but as we said earlier, some do. And for us, prayer has become really just a kind of begging. We beg God to do something. We ask for something. It's petitionary prayer, is called. Rarely do we have prayers of thanksgiving, which is saying, hey, thank you, or gratitude. And gratitude is really the cornerstone upon which almost everything we do is built. Because gratitude is a recognition of our relationship and indebtedness to others. It's an focusing on others. It's an other focus rather than a me focus. There's always an ego, in the meaning an I, a sense of self. We always have a sense of self. But when we talk about something being egotistical, what we mean is that they think more of themselves than others. Or they're always thinking of themselves rather than others. When we say someone is selfless, we're always saying that they're putting the needs of others before them. What we need to do is develop a healthy selflessness. And a healthy selflessness is, as mentioned in our opening prayer, and put power into me so that having obtained this gift, I may enlighten those of my race who are in ignorance, my brothers and thy sons. we want to achieve something so that, not just for ourselves alone, but for others. Whether it's here mentioned in the Hermetica or in anywhere else, or as those of you we talked about at lunch in Tibetan Buddhism, that essence of bodhicitta, or the enlightened heart, the awakened heart, the courageous heart where you seek to become enlightened not for yourself alone, but to help others. Again, this is the cornerstone of practice, and we see it repeated here in the Hermetic text. So with thought, we have visualization, our mind. With word, or speech, we have the prayers. And with our body, we have, or deeds, we have actions that we undertake to bring them all together. These actions can be simple gestures, or can be simply the way we sit when we undertake meditation or prayer. But we bring them all together. As I said, we say we've sinned in thought, word, and deed, but it's also through our thought, word, and deed that we achieve illumination, that we bring everything back into alignment. Now, memory is the key to immortality. It's pretty straightforward. If you remember it, then it happened. If you don't remember it, then it didn't happen. You know how we define someone who's smart, someone who's intelligent? It's not by their problem-solving ability, but how much they can remember. That's one of the jokes about being a doctor. To be a doctor, what you have to be able to do is just memorize a whole lot of stuff. There's a little bit more to it than that, but ask anyone who's in a medical training program. It doesn't seem that way. Just memorizing this after this after this, and relationships. So memory is the key to immortality. Now, some of what I'm about to say, I don't know how it fits with physiology. I'll give you a little bit, and of course those who have a better background in anatomy can either correct me or fill in the blanks. But, you know, the throat, which governs our metabolism, is esoterically connected to the body and mind, in that speech is a manifestation of thought. When we're thinking something, you say, well, say what's on your mind. Get it out there. And we hear in the Gospel of John, in the beginning was the Word. The Word is the mind of God made manifest. The Word is speech. And of course, some Kabbalists have written, an interesting book entitled God is a Verb, because the name for God implies becoming, or growth, or unfoldment, rather than a static thing. It's active. It's not a noun. It's a verb. It's active. Speech is active. It doesn't just happen. We make it happen. And it's controlled. And that's why the prayers are important, because the prayers have particular meaning, particular focus, a goal, an outcome that we seek from it. Whether it's simply to express our gratitude or to look for some kind of blessing or insight. I remember reading it always seems when I'm sitting somewhere, someone wants to convert me to something. It's quite fascinating. I was down at Carter's Ice Cream one day with my kids and a friend of mine, and some woman came up to us to hand us these pamphlets on some Italian saint, and thanked her very much for them, and well, thank you very much, and tried to get back to whatever we were doing. And she just kind of, one of the problems, it's kind of like a Jehovah's Witness, once you've opened the door, you're in trouble. So she's talking to me, and I just looked at the folder, and I believe it said there, it talked something about whenever you say the rosary, because that was what they were big on, was you should have an idea in mind about what you want some illumination or insight on. That not just to pray it, but have an idea as to how to, or work into that, the idea of further unfoldment of your understanding or whatever it happened to be. I thought that was very interesting, because how often we don't pray that. We just kind of pray. And this goes back to the kind of new agey, new thought idea. You get what you ask for. You ask for vague stuff, you get vague stuff. You ask for particulars, you get particulars. The universe is kind of nice that way. It gives us what we ask for. With this, we're asking for some very particular thought with a very particular outcome. In esoteric physiology, the alchemist Paracelsus said that the throat is ruled by the planet Mercury. And Mercury, of course, is the messenger of the gods. He is the uniter of the worlds, the god, and one of the guides of the dead. Mercury also presides over, in alchemical medicine, our nervous system and mind. Now, in order to dream lucidly, that is, with awareness that you are dreaming, it is stated that in Kabbalah you need to have in some modern schools of Kabbalah, that you need to have a strong inner awakening that would relate to the level of Hod. Now, that's just a way of saying you have to have a strong understanding of your own mind. because the tree of life is a nice little compartmentalized diagram, but let us not confuse the map for the territory. Now, in Kabbalah, the throat is also associated with da'at, or knowledge, in some schools. Now, knowledge is just that. It's to know, to apprehend, or to have an experience of something in a direct, personal, and visceral manner. Knowledge is awareness or insight. This is something, this is sometimes not only given to the throat, but also to the back of the head in the area that we think of as the medulla oblongata, which is interesting because that sits our visual and our auditory regions of the brain sit right on top of that, and of course that's probably what gets activated a great deal when we sleep and dream. I don't know for certain, I'm just assuming that, because the medulla oblongata, as you know, takes care of the automatic functions of the body, the unconscious functions of the body, of which psychic and paranormal phenomena is related. In many ways, any psychic practices that you do are simply designed to heighten your awareness of your nervous system and the function of the nervous system. It's very important to know. It's not just a mental thing, but that mental thing moves through something, and that thing it moves through is your body and your nervous system. Now, we already sleep, which makes this practice great. You're going to sleep anyhow. Let's take a few minutes out and prepare for it. Make some use of it, right? And we already dream. But how many of you remember your dreams well? Yeah, sometimes no. The idea is to increase memory of the dreams. That's the first thing, because if we dream and we don't remember it, then it's again like it didn't happen. So the first thing we have to do is increase our memory of the dreams. Then it's to recognize that we are dreaming when we dream, or enter into the lucid dreaming state. There are things that happen. Sometimes you end up staying awake when you'd rather be asleep, but don't worry. That's a mental perception, not a physical one. And when the mental perception changes, your body's rested. Now, here are the directions. This is very important that you follow them, particularly the way I've given them here, because they're meant to accommodate your particular and unique circumstances of not having many months of teaching time where we can go over everything in detail. So pay attention. As you lay in bed, imagine that your body is hollow, empty and light and luminous, and that a light radiates from it even several feet into the room, or lights up the room, or even the area around your house if you like. You must practice this. It is light and luminous, bright. Then say the following prayer. And this is an affirmation. It is a statement of fact. Tonight I will dream. I will remember my dreams upon awakening. I will dream and know that I am dreaming. And I will direct my dreams. And I will perceive the primordial light, the face of creation. Tonight I will dream. I will remember my dreams upon awakening. I will dream and know that I am dreaming, and I will direct my dreams, and I will perceive the primordial light. Now you can just start in the beginning with the first two. Tonight I will dream and I will remember my dreams upon awakening, and you can work with that. And then after you get some proficiency, you can layer on the extra lines. Tonight I will dream. I will remember my dreams upon awakening. I will dream and know that I am dreaming, and I will direct my dreams. I will perceive the primordial light, also known as the face of creation. The luminous lumina, the light of lights, the light of lights. Then, imagine a small red sphere, clear, very clear and radiant, at your throat. Make it about the size of a marble. Even though it's about the size of a marble, its radiance may extend further outward, like a halo around it. So even though that your sphere is maybe the size of your knuckle or a marble, it radiates a light that's brighter in all directions. Now place yourself inside the sphere. Your mind, in the beginning when you do these visualizations, you're often looking at it as if you're looking at the third person. What you need to do is you need to put yourself inside it. as though you're looking at your throat. As though you could look up and see the top of your head, or look down and see the body, and all this is very clear and luminous. There's nothing really inside you because you're hollow, but it's as if you could do this. As if you have to anchor your consciousness into that sphere in your throat. Place yourself inside the sphere and see it now almost gigantic from its interior. Because as you move in there, of course, you're not limited. You no longer have a body. So it's not like you have to shrink in space or anything. Time and space are relative. You know? So if you were to be inside that sphere, it could be as big or as small as you'd like it to be. Now you have no body, you're just mind inside the sphere. Now if you want, you can imagine yourself having a kind of a red luminous body too, or some vague outform in the sphere, but I just don't want that. I want you to just put yourself in the sphere, okay? Repeat the prayer again as you fall asleep. That's it. There are other colors that can be used. I outlined some of them in the book. This is the easiest and quickest one to go with. If you use the other colors, then you have to start laying on different symbols that we don't have time to go over. Okay? That's why we go with this one. Now, of course, later on you can add symbols and images to us. You can put holy figures in it if you have a particular affinity for some saint or someone.
Or the representation of Sophia?
You could do that, yes, you can do that. But right now, just kind of work with it as it is. You can also imagine it as you're in there as a rose, a red rose, but that's usually and almost exclusively used for the heart. We'll talk about that later. Doesn't mean you can't do it, I'm just telling you, you come across differences. This will speed up your memory and your ability to remember things. How long you'll have to do this is uncertain to me, because each one of you is different. Okay? And even though you may not have the perfect experiences that you want, you will find that you will remember your dreams more frequently than before. You're also going to find that your dreams take on a more active and vivid state during different lunar cycles as a result. So that those periods of the new moon and the full moon, you will find yourself dreaming most actively, or at least remembering it. Now, this will also deals with the speech centers. So, of course, you want to make sure as you're doing this that you're purifying your speech as much as you can by what you say and even how much you say. I know some people never even squeak out a peep, okay? But some people, need to slow down a bit, okay? Very active. They got a lot of energy. That's fine. But sometimes it gets wasted by too much talking. And this is a strong creative energy. And I've noticed with some creative folks, and those of you who've engaged in projects here will know that this to be true, that don't talk about it, go do it. And how often I've had someone tell me, they want to write this or they want to write that. And I said, well, just go write it. Don't tell me about it. You see, by the time they're done speaking about it, they're exhausted. They've spent all their enthusiasm. And then they have to get it back again. The people who do the most often talk the least. You just go get it done. So the lesson there has to do a great deal with silence. Things grow in silence. They're nurtured there. You don't keep ripping the seed up every 3 days to see if it's sprouted yet. You leave it alone. And if you talk too much, nobody listens to what you say. You have to make it meaningful. There was a funny line in that movie, maybe it came out maybe 10 years ago, was it? The Village. And the one fellow there, I guess he's kind of one of the heroes. He said, people are always asking me to talk, and maybe just I don't have anything to say. People talk too much. So you think about that in terms of, I'm not asking you to take a vow of silence, but to step back and pay attention to how much you talk and what you talk about. This is important, the what. I know many people who just ramble. And even after told, okay, it's time to be quiet now, they can't shut up. They just can't. There are other reasons for that too. I think it has to do with just the way they direct their energy and how they have to express it, that if the less outlets they have, energy's got to go out. It's got to go somewhere. And they're just kind of barfing it out all the time because they don't do anything with it. Instead of focusing it on something, it just finds an outlet. So work with this and see where it will take you. Now, some ways of starting go more to a heart practice, or others start with the throat and then move to the heart.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Now, I have particular type of dreams. I have insecurity issues. I'm always losing my keys, losing my bag. Oh my God, I have my bag, my keys in my bag. And when I wake up, I go like, oh God, it's a dream. And I have done this for years. It's always a different dream. But I left my keys somewhere, I left my bag somewhere. Somebody got out the bus and took it. But I mean, these are dreams that are in my head. But you're saying like direct your dreams. So what am I looking for? If I don't want this, and I don't have it all the time. But when I have it, and I wake up, I'm happy. But I dream different things from time to time. And I guess I dream every night, but don't remember.
Right. Yeah.
So when you're saying you want us to direct our dream, is this to get more out of life, to go into spiritual? Is this?
That is correct. That's see, we're working towards that now. The first.
Get rid of like this insecurity thing.
Yeah, that's right. The insecurities and the nonsense that go on, and we're gonna move towards that.
Okay.
The first part here is just to remember.
So then those dreams are just dreams that come.
They come and they come and they go. Doesn't mean they don't have any meaning. It just said if it's not terribly apparent to you, it's as good as not having a meaning.
I could have done that.
Yeah. I mean, the joke about God, well, couldn't you have been a little more clear on that? So it's the same thing here. Couldn't you have been a little more clear on that point, So if you're...
Why do I want my dream? Why do I...
Well, because you're going to move beyond that static
okay.
and that confusion. We want to move beyond that static and confusion into clarity, and the clarity is of awakening, of lucidity, of being awake in your dream. Saying, oh, this is a dream. Okay, that's pretty cool. Oh, I know I'm dreaming. That's neat. That's what we want to move towards, and then move from there too. Now,
then is dreaming just something that's going on in your unconscious, conscious, so you want to go in there to learn more about yourself and your true self?
Right. It's all in your own head. That's not to say that you don't have some encounters or experiences that are with other beings or entities or sentient beings or conscious beings, but they're very rare for most people. Almost everything that you'll experience is limited to your own mind.
And one thing I do know, I remember like the therapist saying, like we absorb so much in the day, and if we really had to think about it, we'd be like crazy, So that's why they're able to hypnotize someone that saw a car speed by or something and get more information because you really got it. But you can't filter all that information. Somebody that's hyperactive, like my older son, he's very hyperactive. He knew everything going on everywhere, and it was like just to get him to concentrate. But they were saying, that's focusing. We see it all. You can block out all that music and everything and listen to you. So, but it's still within your brain.
That's correct. You see, your subconscious is taking in information because your nervous system is taking it in. It's taking it from it all the time. Doesn't mean we're aware of it, but it's taking it in, and it goes somewhere. And
they said, like, you filter it out when you sleep, like you have to sleep, and that's the filter. And I have found many times when I have a dream, and I start talking about it, it may have nothing to do with actually what I dreamt, but the name that I used was someone I saw during the day. Or something like, oh, I was talking about Helen, she's dead. Oh, I saw Helen so-and-so today. And like, it takes on like, oh, this went on during the day.
Well, that's right. What we do is we associate things together. We make relationships with things, and they create these mini scenes inside our mind we call a dream. What we want to do is recognize that that's what we're doing. See, our subconscious is a creative force. That's what it does. It creates. That's all it does. Doesn't do anything else. It just creates. So we want to understand how that works and how to use it. So what we do is, first thing is to become aware that it exists, understand how it functions, and to become awake within it. It's becoming awake within ourself. See, again, we talk about a subconscious, almost the same language we talk about a soul. As if it's something I got in the closet somewhere and I'll bring it out when I need it. It's always there, it's always functioning. It is the underlying ground and support of our being. That's important to understand. The subconscious is the foundation of your being. It is the summation of who you are. It is who you are. I like to say you don't possess a subconscious, you are a subconscious. Because most of the time you're not really aware of what's happening. Okay, so now what we do is another approach is to work off the heart instead of the throat. Some people even layer them. We'll talk about that in a minute. Well, this is how it's layered. Now you could fall asleep doing this, or you could follow this direction. Again, you would start the same way. You'd visualize your body luminous. You'd say the prayer. Now, some people, when they wake up during the night, as we all do, as you begin to fall back to sleep, it's usually about 2 hours after you've first gone to sleep. Okay? As you begin to fall back to sleep, focus your attention in the region of your heart. And that would be right actually in the center of your chest, right here, between the nipples. It's in the center. Okay? Imagine this as a red rose. And your spiritual teacher can be in the center of it. Like this. That's a rose. And there he is in the center of it. And you can even make it big, too, at this point, where you kind of, almost like a room where you're standing there with him or her. Now, if you don't have any spiritual teacher or saint or holy being that you have a particular affinity for, that's fine. Just visualize the rose and put yourself in the center of it, in the pollen stem. Now, to help, if you have that to do this, of course, as you fall asleep or if you wake up, it's helpful if in the room across from you, you have a picture of that person or being on the wall, or a statue or something.